This episode is presented to you by NFL Sunday Ticket, now on YouTube and YouTube TV. With NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube and YouTube TV, you can watch your favorite team's out-of-market Sunday games, plus watch up to 4 games at once with Multiview. Don't miss the race to the playoffs. NFL Sunday Ticket is now just $39 when bundled with YouTube TV, where you get even more football. Visit youtube.com/Spotify offer to sign up now. Lowest price on YouTube TV with base plan. Rest of 2023 season. Terms and embargoes apply. No cancellations.
This episode is brought to you by Seed. Seed's DSO1 is a 2-in-1 probiotic and prebiotic designed for whole body health. Formulated with 24 clinically and scientifically studied strains, DSO1 offers benefits in and beyond the gut. See why DSO1 is the probiotic recommended by top doctors and nutritionists. Go to seed.com/Spotify for 25% off Seed's DSO1 Daily Symbiotic.
What I love most about Mi Gente is our community and how important it is to take care of our own.
Hey, it's Honey and Carolina. On our podcast, Life in Spanglish, we talk about how important being there for your loved ones is.
Pero también sobre lo importante que es tener a alguien dispuesto a apoyarte cuando lo necesites, como lo hace State Farm.
Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Aprende más en es.statefarm.com.
Hello and welcome to the Paddock and the Pavilion with Stephen Wallace. In each show, Stephen will interview someone connected to the world of horse racing or cricket.
October is Black History Month, and joining us today is our regular guest, Roland Butcher, to talk about his Equity, Diversity and Inclusivity tour of the UK. Hello, Roland.
Hey, Stephen. Hey, good to talk to you.
And good to talk to you. I recently saw you in action when you visited my local school, the Neale Wade Academy, in March, Cambridgeshire. What inspired you to start doing the talks on these 3 very important issues?
Well, that's a very, very good question. I think, as you would know, over the last year or so, really, cricket particularly has been under a lot of pressure from all areas, from the media, from the government, everyone else, simply because of the revelations of what took place at Yorkshire and other first-class counties. While that was the catalyst, I think also I have reached the stage of my life now where I think it is important for me to give back some of the things that I would have benefited from in the past. So with that in mind, I really came up with the idea of coming to the UK this summer and spend as much time as possible speaking at schools, universities. I've done a lot of stuff for housing authorities, other corporate events, companies, etc., etc. So on that basis, it's been very important for me also to get the message out and to try and reassure everyone involved that, diversity, inclusivity, equity, and equality, it is something that should be encouraged and something that you can have great benefits from.
And how have the talks been received? Have you had good positive feedback?
Very much so. I think the talks in general, at all levels, the feedback has been excellent. As I said, because, they're hearing it from someone who has come from a diverse background. Obviously, I would have had to overcome many barriers, not just cultural barriers, but all sorts of barriers in terms of moving from a very small place like Barbados in the West Indies to England, the journey through to first-class cricket, the journey through to international cricket, and then the journey after international cricket. So I believe that I have a lot of experience in those areas to really talk at first hand to people who perhaps have not realized that I have experienced those things, and to really, give them the benefit of my experience.
Yeah, and you've worked, I believe, in 16 different countries. And
yeah, well, I've been very fortunate to have had an international cricket career. I think I've worked very hard also to make that a reality. And as a result of that, it has afforded me the opportunity to travel extensively, to visit many countries, to get to know many different peoples, their cultures, their customs, etc. And then really, as a result of that, use that experience to, assist not just myself, but to assist other people in the future. So, going abroad certainly has been a real asset for me because, as I said, I've learned so much being in these different countries that I can relate many instances to people where, they can benefit from something like that. And I've been very fortunate.
Yes, I know from hearing you firsthand, you detailed the importance of diversity, and that is an asset to any organisation. And you particularly experienced that when you played for many years at Middlesex, a very successful side of the 70s, 80s and early 90s. Can you let listeners know how the Middlesex team, how diverse that was and the benefits that the diversity gave the team?
Well, the Middlesex team of the 70s, 80s and late 70s, 80s and 90s was by far the most diverse first-class team, not just in England, but I would say, anywhere around the world. I would say that team had people from all walks of life, all educational backgrounds, different cultures, many, many different countries, social backgrounds, etc., etc. I mean, that was a real, I would say, a real melting pot, because you had so many different people in it. But as a result of that, with some very shrewd leadership by Mike Braley, he was able to get the best out of that environment. And I believe that because of that diversity within our team, that Middlesex became such a successful outfit during that 15-year period. So very much the case that diversity and inclusivity was very much at play even back in those days. And I think it's even more important now.
And it's important that those topics are then transferred into the workplace, schools, universities as well.
Well, it has to become very much part of the everyday life. I don't think it must be something that is only in sport, Everyday life must entertain that. England, in the future of England, really, as it is right now, I mean, England is perhaps one of the most diverse countries on this planet at the moment. And in the future, it's going to be even more so. The number of nationalities that you've got living in England, in large numbers, that's only going to increase in the future. So the sooner that England as a country understand that that's the position they're in, that's the future, and it's a diverse society, and they then become themselves the agent for change to make sure that diversity and inclusivity is taught right across the board, right from children, right through our systems, through our educational systems, through working organizations, committees, boards, etc. The sooner that they get working on that, I can then see a bright future for this country.
And with reference to children, I noticed when you were at the Neale Wade Academy, you were encouraging the children or the students to speak out when these particular topics, pillars, weren't being followed at school.
Yes, so the reason for that is that I believe that, particularly in this day and age, it is very important that people speak up. The process has started. In the past, particularly people who were not confident in themselves, or in most cases, minorities, whether they were ethnic minorities, black, white, green, pink, lesbian, gay, whatever. In the past, a lot of people felt they didn't feel empowered to speak up. So invariably, they kept themselves quiet, fear of, being reprisals against them, fear of being ostracized, fear of being told that they've got a chip on their shoulders. those were the things that prevented people from speaking up in the past. And also the whole thing about diversity and racism and everything was very much under the carpet. So it was not something that people wanted to speak about. Now, the modern day now is that a lot of those people who, by their silence in the past, I believe were complicit also, are now starting to speak up. And that should give encouragement to everyone in any situation to, if there is something not going right, speak up about it, speak to somebody about it, and that way it can be dealt with. But I'm certainly encouraging everyone that don't sit silently, because you can become part of the problem with your silence.
And in your talks, you encourage the children to ask you questions, and you pose questions directly to them.
Yeah, that's important. I don't think it's a situation anymore where there is a boss, and what the boss says is right, and you must follow everything the boss says. I think what is required now is leadership, and leadership is a shared responsibility between the workers and the management. It is not the management telling the workers that this is how it's going to be. I think now you get a much better product if you involve the stakeholders in the decision making, and that is something that was employed very much at Middlesex, where our captain, he ensured that even the youngest player in the team had a say on the decision making within the team, and that empowered the young player, to think in a different way, and as a result of his thinking as well, and the young player's thinking, it helped the team to become a better outfit. So, yeah, it's very, very important to let your voice be heard. Don't suffer in silence anymore. We've had decades and decades of people suffering in silence for whatever reason. I think it's important that you speak up. People are not going to always agree with what you have to say, but still say it anyway. And once you've got discussion, then you can find a way forward.
Before we return to Roland's further thoughts on the Middlesex team, let's hear from Dave Kenning, a teacher of social science at the Neale Wade Academy in March, Cambridgeshire, about Roland's visit to the school in early October. Why did you arrange to book Roland to visit the academy on his tour?
Well, I just thought it was an ideal opportunity, really, for raising the awareness of the students of the issues of diversity and race, particularly in Finland, which is not the most diverse place within the country. And for somebody who obviously had a really high profile, to get somebody who, I must admit, I didn't realise at the time was the first black cricketer to have played Test cricket for England, I think is quite a coup to get in and to have somebody of that stature to talk to the children in the first place, irrespective of what he was talking about.
And what age group were the students who heard Roland talk on the day?
Well, reasonably wide-ranging, from 14 to 18, so year 10, right the way through to year 13.
And what was the reaction, Dave, of the students during and afterwards?
I think they were very interested in the personalisation of his story and coming over at the time that he did in the 60s, and then playing career starting and working through in the 70s. Obviously, is a time that they don't often talk about, and it's important, I think, to try and give a little bit of a historical context of what Britain was like at that time. So, and I think the personal story of his rise to success, and particularly annotated with the clips of actually seeing him playing, I think it brings it to life, really. I think that was probably the bit that maybe they enjoyed most, really. I found it a little bit. I do think that most of them are quite aware of diversity as an issue, probably more than maybe some of our older generation within Finland. And I think that's got to be a good thing, really. I think they've got much more of a liberal and an outgoing attitude towards other people, faiths, characteristics, sexual orientation, whatever it is. It strikes me from teaching them that things are, I hope, moving in the right direction, other than what we see as headlines in the media from time to time still.
Personally, I enjoyed it when the students and Roland were asking questions of each other.
Yes, that's, it's quite a big thing really for children of that age, of teenage age, where they're always a little bit concerned about their image and how they look in front of other students. It's quite brave for them to ask questions. Well, I think some of them particularly were quite pertinent. There was a range of questions, but I think some of them were very good. And I think they're particularly like the slide about equity, which is trying to draw out the fact that, if we give everybody the same, it doesn't actually mean that we're going to get the same results off everybody else. I think that was quite an important factor, quite an important statement that he made there that I think rang true with a number of them, with particular issues themselves, I guess.
That was my next question, really, David. What did you think the students learnt from listening to Roland's journey?
Yeah, I think just how important this issue of diversity is, really. It's too trite, and when you ask this question a lot, you often get the answer, it's really important that we treat everybody the same. Everybody is the same. Well, of course, they're not, are they? I mean, everybody is completely different, irrespective of skin colour. Everybody is completely different, independent of religion, independent of sexual orientation. And the great thing about the world is that everybody is different, because what a boring old world it would be if everybody was the same. And I think it's embracing those differences rather than trying to minimise those differences that I think is the most important thing that the children learned, and something that keeps flashing its head at me, really, and saying that this is the story we've got to keep getting over to them, is that difference is fine and it's to be celebrated, really.
Vernon, the heating and cooling specialist. The name says it all. When you focus solely on indoor comfort for 43 years, well, you get really good at it. Get your heating or cooling system tuned by a Vernon specialist today for only $69. Vernon's 60 to 90 minutes of meticulous system inspection guarantees energy savings, or the tune-up is free. Now that's a value. Go to VernonHeating.com. VernonHeating.com.
And clearly from what you're saying, at Middlesex, Mike Brearley, the former England captain and Middlesex captain, really encouraged people to speak out. And he was really ahead of his time, wasn't he?
Very much so ahead of his time. You must remember also that he came into the Middlesex setup at a time when it was dominated by the senior players. In those days, young players would have had to sit in a corner, and the old pros really made all the decisions. They did all the talking, and the young player just really sat and listened and spoke when he was spoken to. Now, I guess having come into that situation, and with his intellect and vision for the future, he obviously believed that that was not the best way of getting the best out of a team. So the fact that he was now building a very young team, because we all started when he was, we were very young players when he was captain, and he now had to build a unit. So I guess he figured that the best way for me to build this unit, and as you said, ahead of his time, was to engage these young guys, make them part and parcel of the decision making, and see what happens. And it was a tremendous success, because even the most let's say the person who really was very shy and et cetera, once he was involved in the process, even if once or twice, he didn't quite get it right, he learned from that and ensured that he contributed. And an example of this would have been, Mike Brearley as captain on the field of play, would walk up to a young player and make a very simple question like, when Daniel has had 5 overs from the nursery, and who would you replace him with after he's finished his spell? Now, that's a question that would not have been asked to him in his career while he was at Middlesex, because of the senior players. Because the senior players would have felt it is the captain and their prerogative to make those decisions. Now, here he's engaging a young player. And I guess in the beginning, it would be shocking for the young player because he's not expecting that. But what it has done is it sharpened the minds of the young players that even if he didn't have an answer the first time round, that he would never find themselves in that position again. So it ended up really where you had an entire team on the field constantly thinking about what is the best move for the team, what are the permutations, just in case the captain asks them. He didn't always agree with you because we had many conversations because we feel that slip together. He would ask me the very same question and I would give him my perspective. And at times he would say, no, I don't think so. I think so and so. But there was dialogue. And, and because he disagreed, it wasn't a case of him not coming back to you at some other time to ask another question. It was communication. And, sometimes he got it wrong. And he would then say to you, I think you were right. Or, so that's the sort of leadership that we had then, very much ahead of its time. And it really empowered every single player in that team to be not just a good player individually, but, to contribute to the team in many other ways.
And focusing on cricket, do you think that opportunities for young black players with the progress that the ACE programme is making is improving?
Well, I think it's a little bit early to see that improvement because, as you know, the ACE programme really has only been in existence for a year or so. So it's going to take time really for that to bed in and for the players, to come through on a consistent basis because they're starting from scratch. They didn't really have a base to build on. So I think it would be harsh for anyone to expect that the ACE programme would instantly produce this plethora of black players to play first-class cricket and English cricket. I think it's a program that has to be given time. I think once it's given time, it will produce the results because, the desire to play the game is very much still up there amongst black people, regardless of what people say for whatever reason that, the black youngsters, particularly born in England, don't want to play cricket. That really is very much a myth. The reality is that large numbers of black people and minority people live in deprived areas with no facilities. So they cannot get coaching. There's nowhere to practice for them. There's no clubs for them to play. It's an expensive sport. So all of those things really have conspired, to ensure that those minorities don't really get the opportunity. That's the important thing. The opportunity to challenge for these positions. Now, obviously, the ACE program sets out to try and level the playing field to some degree by providing them with somewhere to play, with coaching, a development pathway, and also role models to show them that this has been achieved in the past. It can be achieved again. And it's really what you need now really is to give it time. And, I would ask people to be very patient with the process and allow the ACE program, to do what it's set out to do. And I believe that if that is done, that it will produce exactly what, it said it would do.
But it mustn't be forgotten that Ebony Rainford-Brent has made great strides in a very short period of time, though, hasn't she?
Yes, Ebony is the chairman of the ACE program, and obviously Ebony, like myself, has been, a minority in this country. So, she knows what it's like. I was around the time when the Haringey Cricket College was in existence, and that program, which was funded by Haringey Council, was instrumental in producing at least a dozen first-class and some international players from a little hall in Haringey. So, that worked. And obviously, Ebony, obviously she would have come up as well during this time. And she recognized, like myself and all the others, that, we have to do something to ensure that the young players and minorities really get the opportunity to challenge. Nobody's asking for handouts. You're just asking for the opportunity to compete. for those positions. And everybody's working hard to make sure that happens.
And of course, you also need more representation on committees and boards as well.
It has to be across the board. As I said, I don't think it's just a cricket thing. If you're speaking about sport right now, I think, you've got to try and get diversity right across the system. No real change will come until you get it at the very top. And I'm talking about at board level. Once you've got diversity at board level and you come down the chain, I believe then, it will work very, very well. Because whether you like it or not, people like to see people that look like themselves in authority. Now, if I don't see anybody that look like me as a youngster, if I don't see anybody that looks like me in the England team, immediately there's a belief that I cannot achieve that. And by having someone in that position, it gives people the belief and the motivation to think, hang on, I can do that. It happened in my case, I happened to be the first player to play for England, but that wasn't my choice. That's how it happened. But at the same time, what it did was it gave other black players in England that motivation to say, hang on a minute, he's done it, so I can do it. So all the players that came after me certainly had that mentality and they did that simply because they saw me there. Now, if you've got that happening right across the board, as I said, in committees, in coaching, on boards, etc., you will get the motivation and the talent will come through because people will strive. Everybody wants to be better, but they must also believe that there's a chance to be better. I think what's happened, unfortunately, in the past is that it has appeared to be a closed door, and people have felt, well, I'm not really welcome there. That's not for me. And then really, there's no motivation to push themselves forward. So once that change is made, and as I said, I just use sport as an example, but that's something that needs to happen, right across the board within the country. Once that happens, some very, very good people will come through. And that will be to the benefit of all those organizations and the country itself.
And you're still taking bookings for your tour before you go back to Barbados?
Yes, we are. I have extended my stay now till mid-December. And really, we're still taking bookings as we speak for me to come and speak. And so there's still spaces available. And as I said, while I'm here, let's utilize the time to spread the message. I think it's an important message to be spread.
And have you a final message, Roland, on these very sensitive but very important subjects of equity, diversity, inclusivity?
I think what is important is that the conversation must continue. I don't think it must be for a period of time. I think this is something that needs to be on the table all the time, day in, day out. How can we make this better? Everybody work towards that. Currently, we're in the month of Black History Month in the UK. While a month is fantastic, I really believe that Black history deserves better than 1 month. 1 month is a start. You can start with a month, but I believe Black history is something that needs to be taught continually. Black people have contributed significantly to the infrastructure of this country. They've helped build this country, and their history also should be told, and not just in a month, because how much can you tell in a month? So for me, I would like to see that happen in the future, that the conversation remains on the table, 12 months of the year, as to how can we improve these situations for all involved.
Well, thanks for that, Roland. Best of luck for the rest of your tour and for your continued fight for equity, diversity and inclusivity.
Yes, of course. I mean, I will keep fighting because I think it is something worth fighting for. I believe it's an asset because I have been a beneficiary myself of coming from that diverse background. I have benefited from that. I believe that others should as well. And I will continue to fight the good fight.
Thank you very much.
Great pleasure.
Thank you for listening to The Paddock and the Pavilion. You can download the show on Apple Podcasts,
Amazon Music,
SoundCloud, Stitcher, and Spotify.
Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at The Pad and Pav. Don't forget, if you like the show, please do leave us a rating and review.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Looking for a fun way to win 25 times your money this football and basketball season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projection for a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's as easy as that. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Ready to test your skills? Join the Prize Picks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/play100 and use code play100. That's code play100 at prizepicks.com/play100 for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy.